What position rooms got better for the Florida Gators in this past offseason? Well, we're going to talk about that here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. Happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and make every moment more. Right now, new customers join today, get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And today we are talking about which position rooms got better, because I realized this offseason has been rather tumultuous, bringing in the strength conditioning coach, losing him, and now we're kind of in flux trying to figure that one out again. Firing Corey Raymond, Sean Spencer, taking a while to hire the replacements. Finally, recruiting day was just, or signing day was just, took years of my life. But throughout all of it, Florida did get better at quite a few spots, actually. And I'm not going to talk about all of them today. Just three of the ones where I think they improved the most and where I do think will be improved the most in 2024. Like, safety is going to be up there for sure, no doubt in my mind. Not on this show, though, because we're going to do a whole look at the safety room at some point soon, because I do think that they got quite better. But linebacker is a spot that I did want to talk about. You get Shamar James back. And Shamar, pre-injury, was having a pretty damn good year. Statistically, I don't think he was really, all that. But watching the film, Shamar looked like he was kind of in his element in 2023, again, before he got hurt. He was looking much improved. And it was one of those situations where I think linebacker play around him kind of made him look worse as well. I do think he needs to improve at deconstructing blocks when he's actually engaged with an offensive lineman. But I do think that you kind of saw him take the next step, especially mentally last year. And I do think that this upcoming season, you get to see that again, where he's going to have another year of development. A better supporting cast around him is going to improve his play, not just at linebacker, but also defensive line in front of him as well, which we'll talk about them next. But I think Shamar James is primed for a big jump, because we saw him rotate in 2021 or in 2022. We saw him start and then get hurt in 2023. And then now in 2024, it's like, all right, man, like this is your time to really, really lock in here. And so I do think that Shamar's prime for a big year. Speaking of the better supporting cast around him, specifically at linebacker, Pup Howard is a guy that came from South Carolina that I do think a lot of Florida Gators fans recognize the impact that Pup Howard can bring. When he came over, it was huge news. It was just massive news. I know that I have quite a few friends that cover South Carolina. Very unfortunate for them, but quite a few friends that cover South Carolina, and they were pissed when Pup Howard came to Gainesville, which made me happier. Like, that made my day better knowing that it bothered them. But I do think that when you look at what Scooby Williams brought to the table last year, which again, I will say this, Scooby Williams was not good in 2023. I don't think anybody thinks he was. But considering he's an edge rusher, like that's what he's built to do. He's not built to play off ball linebacker. He can't do that, and we'll see that probably again at Texas A&M. But played like an animal, like just was constantly communicating, doing what needs to be done as a vocal leader of the defense, and did his best play wise. He was just like, I don't fault the guy for not being good enough. I fault the coaching staff for not having him ready or not having someone that's good enough to do that. So Pup Howard replacing him is not just, oh, we're replacing a starting linebacker with another starting linebacker. It's that we're replacing a starting linebacker that wasn't very good with a starting linebacker that can be pretty damn good. Like Scooby Williams was kind of capped out. Like what he did last year is probably as good as you're going to see from him as an off-ball linebacker. But now with Pup Howard, what we saw from him last year at South Carolina was him as a true freshman. True freshman. And so now you get to see him with a little bit more development in a defense that I do think is better suited for his needs or for his skill set, we'll say, where you can line him up on the edge, you can line him up off ball and move him around and kind of make him a chess piece, and you can allow him to attack. And he's athletic enough to play off ball genuinely, and he's got enough size to play off ball genuinely, where again, I don't think Scooby had that really. Then you look at the depth, and Derek Wingo to end the year last year played out of his mind. And I'm going to say I'm not buying into the whole he's going to be the breakout player of the defense this year. Not buying into that. I will, however, say that he improved or later in the year. He looked pretty good when he was just able to rush the passer. He was used as a blitzer like crazy. They were kind of just like Derek Wingo was the guy where Austin Armstrong's like, this is where I'm going to go back to my roots and just blitz the hell out of you with a linebacker. Derek Wingo is that. And I do think that Derek Wingo is better than he's given credit for. I don't think he's as good as people are expecting him to be this year. That's where I land on him. But I do think that he's got a role. He's probably going to be a contributor when they go three linebackers and there's a strong side off ball. It's probably going to be Derek Wingo this year. That'd be my expectation with Pup as the weak side or Mike, and then Shamar on the other off ball spot there. Manny Nunnery also as a rotator potential starter while Pup gets ready, but I don't think that's going to be the case. But Manny Nunnery last year played well as well. I know that you're going to constantly look back to the 4th and 17 against Missouri, where Manny Nunnery didn't gain enough depth. They threw it to Luther Burden right by him, and it was a big first down. Florida ended up losing the game. And yeah, had Manny Nunnery been playing further back, sure, would have been a stop there and would have been a win against number 9 Missouri. You would have been bowl eligible, and then kind of the narrative around Florida changes a lot if you win that game, especially if you go, oh, Graham Mertz got hurt, second to last game of the season. We beat number 9 on the road, all that. But guess what? Didn't happen. And I'm not going to let one play from Manny Nunnery really change my opinion of him too much, because that's not how things work. Like, you look at the whole body of work, and considering the expectations that Manny Nunnery had around him last year, his full body of work was actually pretty good. So I'm very comfortable with Manny Nunnery being the linebacker 2, or the like in that second string, that first rotation. And then you also look at what they did in recruiting, and you brought in Miles Graham and Aaron Childs. And I think I've been very open about this. I think Brian Smith has been very open about this when he's been on the show, that it's not silly, but unrealistic to expect 2 true freshman linebackers to come in and make big plays early on. Just because that's not a fair expectation to have at one of the hardest positions to play. So I don't think that's fair to have. However, when you look at them as they're going to be probably the 3rd rotating linebackers, play, a handful of snaps every game, you can look at that as a positive and go, all right, well, they're going to get some experience, get ready for 2025 and move on. And also by the end of the year, they could be contributors genuinely to the defense. And you even go a little bit further where you go, okay, we're going to use them on downs where we can just blitz them. And that's what they're going to do most of the time, because that's the easiest part, where you go, okay, you're blitzing no matter what. And it kind of dumbs it down for linebackers, and a true freshman linebacker. It's really hard to come into the SEC with how these teams like to attack linebackers. Like, I wouldn't expect many young linebackers to play against Ole Miss this year, because Lane Kiffin puts linebackers in hell. But I do think that the linebacker room is much improved. And again, I mentioned the supporting cast around them is improved, and it's going to improve their play, like the defensive line, which we'll talk about in just a second. But first, we are going to get a quick word from FanDuel. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Yeah, Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams. Like, personally, I'll tell you now, I bet on Trey Mann, Bradley Beal almost every game that they play. Now I can bet on Trey Mann that he's on the Charlotte Hornets and actually gets playing time. Now I can bet on him. Couldn't with OKC, but now I can, and I bet on Bradley Beal very frequently. Hasn't been awesome, but I bet on him frequently. Just got to rep the Gators. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and shoot your shot. And remember that FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And I do think that defensive line needs to be talked about when you talk about a position group that improved over the year. You had the big departure, and by defensive line, I'm not talking about the jack linebacker spot. I'm talking about the just guys with their hand in the dirt, we'll say. Because again, I know defensive front, defensive line, we're talking about the guys with their hand in the dirt. Okay. So you got the F and the two interior spots. Cam Jackson with another year. I'm excited to see what he can do. I do think that he's been working on his pass rush repertoire because, again, he doesn't have to be he's never going to be Javon Dexter. That's not going to be Cam Jackson's game ever. However, he's already a very good pure nose tackle. Just let him eat up blocks and stop the run up the middle. He's pretty damn good at that. I just want to point that out. And I know that that's a very overlooked part for just a football fan to go, okay, cool, nose tackle, great. Stop dive up the middle, QB sneak, whatever it may be. Cam Jackson did a very good job in 2023. You look at that Tennessee game specifically, and that was a big reason Florida won that game because Florida went light in the box so often so that they can focus on stopping the passing attack of Tennessee. And they got to go light in the box because of Cam Jackson. He was a wrecking ball in that game. Now we look at him and we go, okay, if you can develop a tiny bit of a pass rush, literally just a tiny bit, we're talking about improving your NFL draft stock because right now as a pure nose tackle, you're going mid day 3, and that's probably it. But if you can add a little bit of pass rush to your repertoire, we're talking, a bit of an improvement to early day 3 probably for Cam Jackson. If again doesn't need sacks, but generating pressures, just keeping quarterbacks from being able to step up into the pocket. Because when the edge rushers get around, QBs step up. If Cam Jackson's pushing the center's butt right into them, ain't nobody stepping up, right? That's what we're looking at. I mean, yeah, if you can't step up, you can't have the play like Spencer Rattler just throwing it up to Xavier Legette against Florida, and it's just working immediately. Even though the edge got right in, things happen like that. And you also added Joey Slackman, which Joey Slackman is kind of a multifaceted improvement, I'll say, for the Florida Gators defensive line. First off, he's going to be starting at your big end spot, that 3 tech, that other tackle spot. He's an improved pass rusher over Caleb Banks. I think Joey Slackman's going to be really good this year. I've said that since he started taking visits and the murmurs started coming up with Florida and Joey Slackman. I've been saying this is an addition that I'm really excited for and I've really wanted to happen. And I'm very happy he's a Florida Gator. And so I think that Joey Slackman's just improvement or his just level of play is significantly higher than Caleb Banks. I think he's going to be really good this year. 1 year in SEC play, and then you go to the NFL. I think it's going to be a damn good year for Joey Slackman. But that's one level of, okay, you've improved that spot. Another level, however, is that Caleb Banks now goes from starter to depth. He goes to your big end 2. He could play nose tackle as well. He's your 3rd interior defensive lineman because he's playing either spot. He's not just nose 2. He's not just 3 tech 2. He could play either spot. Although I will say Desmond Watson's probably going to play nose more, but Caleb Banks can play both spots. That's kind of a big improvement there, that you had a guy who wasn't bad as a starter. I know a lot of people don't like Caleb Banks for some reason. Probably because he was a backup at Louisville, came to Florida, was a starter, and it's like, Louisville backups shouldn't be starting in Florida. He was, and he played pretty well. Sometimes you just look at guys where it's like, all right, maybe he should have been playing at Louisville. And Caleb Banks going from starter to depth is great for Florida because Caleb Banks is immediately one of the best rotational defensive linemen in the SEC. Truly, he's very good for a backup. I think he's an average starter, but when you have an average starter coming off the bench, you're pretty happy about that, right? Like that makes sense. having that pass rush as well, because you could have Joey Slackman and Caleb Banks both playing on the interior on passing downs, and you're not worried about, oh, we can't generate a pass rush from the interior at all. Because that was a big thing last year. Cam Jackson and Desmond Watson, neither of them were generating a pass rush on passing downs. And it just led to opposing quarterbacks being able to stand back there, go, all right, double Princely. No one else is getting in. Someone get open somewhere. And it allowed opposing offenses to kind of do that. And it repeatedly shot Florida in the foot. Just repeatedly, just big gain, big gain, big. And it was rough and it was ugly and it was bad. And I hated it. Now you have Joey Slackman and Caleb Banks, and you don't have Princely on the edge, but now you have two guys where you have to respect their pass rush a bit. And while you double one, you hope other guys step up. And also, according to, I think it was On3 that reported it last week, it might have been 24/7, that Kelby Collins is now playing that same big end spot, maybe F, but they reported he's playing that same big end spot. I think it's more likely he plays F, right? So he played F and Jack last year a bit. I would think that they're like, all right, now we're going to play F and maybe that big end spot. But either way, you have Kelby Collins taking that next step on the defensive line. You got Justice Boone coming back. You got Tyreek Sapp again with another year. You've got guys where it's like, all right, Kelby Collins, your second year in college football. You're expected to take a pretty, not a massive leap, but a pretty noticeable and significant leap in year 2 now, because you've had a year in that strength and conditioning program, however you may feel about it, whoever the new coach may be for that. You've had a year now in an SEC weight room. And that's going to add up like to that work. It's going to work. And then Gerald Chapman, also big fan of what he can do in the defensive line. I have literally not heard a single person say a single bad thing about him, which is kind of one of those things that leaves me to be like, all right, well, I'm ready to be heard again because my hopes are indeed up for him. We're going to flip to the offensive side of the ball for the last segment, which is why we're not talking about safeties. I also want to give them their own time. Before we do that, though, we're going to get a quick word from eBay Motors here. With passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. It's eligible items only. Exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you love hearing my voice, probably hear it in a Twitter space here and there. It's fun. I don't know what to tell you. It's fun. But the last position that we're talking about for the Florida Gators to improve upon here, tight end. I do think that they're going to be significantly improved this year. One, because what we saw last year, like actually, let's go back to 2022. 2022, the tight end room, virtually non-existent as far as being consistent parts of the offense, right? There was Keon Zipper making plays here and there. There was Jonathan Odom making plays here and there. That was it. 2023, we saw Arlis Boardingham and Hayden Hansen finally play, because they didn't in 2022. And they played pretty well when you consider, especially first time playing SEC. Like Hayden didn't play a single snap in 2022. And I'm pretty sure Arlis only played in the bowl game. And even then, it was like a bit, not even a ton. And so now you see their first significant snaps. They both got better as the year went on. I've been critical of Arlis as a blocker. I don't think he's a good blocker. He did get better as the year went on, though. And Hayden, good blocker. Pass catcher was virtually non-existent at the beginning of the year, and he did eventually move on. It was like there's a string of like 3 or 4 games where he had his career-long catch, just kept going. Now we get them in year 2 as actual players. And I do think that they're one of those rooms where you say, you're in year 2 where we do expect a pretty big jump because it's not like you're year 2 rotationally, like Kelby Collins. Kelby Collins played as a true freshman rotationally, and now is probably going to play more of a starter role or a heavier rotational role. Arliss and Hayden, you were the starters in 2023. There's a ton of film for you to look at and improve upon and develop there, and then take those next steps. And we've seen you play in large sample sizes. Like with Kelby, we haven't really seen him play a ton. We haven't seen Kelby really get many games with like 40 snaps. Hasn't been a thing. Hayden and Arliss have had multiple games where they've played a lot of snaps, and now they can look back, reflect, and get used to that and develop there. Also important to note that with Russ Callaway, he joined the Florida Gators coaching tight ends during spring ball last year. He's been on staff since 2022, but he was on the defensive side, and he went to tight ends during spring ball in 2022. And Hayden has been on this show, a ton. Hayden is during the season a weekly guest. And Hayden was very openly like, hey, yeah, Russ Callaway helped me a ton. Like, he helped me improve a ton. That's who I'll give my development there to. So now you've had a full year with him. You got to go through the offseason, and now you get to learn more from him. And it's also been reported that Russ Callaway is going to be more involved in game planning for Florida. And if you want to hand play calling duties over, Billy, I won't be mad at you if it's Russ. I'm just saying. But I would imagine that tight end coach getting involved in the game plan with a head coach that wants to have 12 personnel, I'd imagine Russ is going to be like, hey, what if we threw them the ball a little bit more? What if we did that? Because Billy's always been heavy on 12 personnel, but has never really involved the tight end in the passing attack. Now you've got Russ Callaway with Hayden, who's an inline tight end starter. And then you've got Arliss, who's your flex tight end starter, and Russ Callaway, who has air raid principles or air raid history behind his offense. Use Arliss in that little give Arliss some air raidy kind of concepts, and you're kind of cooking in the tight end room, right? You also get Keon Zipper back, who I do think that as a pass catcher is going to be pretty good as your your flex tight end too, we'll call him. And Tony Livingston now with a full year actually there, because while he was part of the same recruiting class technically as Arliss and Hayden, he joined the team in January after that year. So Tony Livingston also now playing tight end fully, has been here for a year, has been able to learn. And I've been told from people in the building, when Tony gets the playbook down, when Tony Livingston gets the playbook down, when he catches up to actually being a developed tight end, he's gonna be really nice. And what I've been told is he's gonna be a killer. And I will just say that with Tony Livingston, if he does take those steps, if he does have that development, not a bad idea for tight end 3 and your inline tight end 2. I think that's how the rotation is going to work out, by the way. Because Tony kind of played both spots last year, mostly because you didn't have an inline tight end you could trust on the field. It was Hayden, and then Hayden played the huge majority of snaps, and Tony played a little bit there. Because Dante Sanders just was out of the game plan after Utah, really. And then Arliss and Tony rotated as pass catchers. Tony got banged up, and it was just a process, really. But I do think having Arliss in year 3 in college, year 2 as a starter, Hayden year 3 in college, year 2 as a starter, I think you're looking at I think it's fair to have some pretty significant expectations as far as their improvement. And I'm not talking about production. I don't like to talk about pass catchers' production as far as, oh, well, they got worse because, if they were open more on film and they just didn't get the ball, it's not on them, right? So I'm not even saying production-wise. I'm just saying film-wise, we're probably going to see a pretty significant jump from them. Like Hayden as a pass catcher, Arliss as a blocker. If you see that improvement, I don't think anybody's going to be complaining about 12 personnel usage like they were this year and the year before. Then if you see that improved tight end play, then you're going to kind of open your eyes to, all right, they can make things happen, especially when, like I talked about yesterday, With Arliss, you're not really going 12 personnel. You're really going 11.5 personnel because he is a receiver tight end in that Travis Kelce mode, not the Kyle Pitts model. You're looking at more of the Travis Kelce power slot role. If you can get effectiveness out of that and you can have him be a even decent blocker, you're looking at a really damn good tight end room. And I do think that having improved depth with Keon Zipper returning and Tony Livingston having another year under his belt, I do think you're looking at a much improved room where Arliss and Hayden can actually take some snaps off here and there. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I'll see you all tomorrow.